Is it too early for a 53-man roster prediction? Absolutely not. It's post-draft, baby. It's that time of year. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. So thank you all for coming and hanging out. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire. The Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K will turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Today on the show, I'm straight up stealing an idea from Sam over at the Minnesota Football Party. We did a 53-man roster prediction. I didn't put one together until before the show, so I kind of did it on the fly, and I didn't get the time to think it out. But then I kind of thought, you know what? There's some utility to this exercise, not necessarily in me throwing out a prediction and saying here it is, and I'm going to get all 53 right, but rather in just getting a feel for what the difficult positions are going to be. So the real question here isn't going to be what's my 53? I'll tell it to you, but it's not going to be the point. The real point is, where's the roster pressure on the Vikings? What are going to be the positions where it's hard to make the team? And what does that mean for players who are either, newly drafted, old draft picks that aren't, living up to their draft slot, and undrafted free agents? Where can they slot in and all that stuff? And we can take that as it goes. But it gives us a chance to really go over the entire, I believe 89 is where we're at, man roster, and try to suss out exactly how we feel about everybody. So let us begin with the quarterbacks as we always would. Of course, J.J. McCarthy is up top. He, by the way, talked to media. It was, I don't think, a very informative press conference, but it was interesting. I could tell the beat had a similar question to one that I have had, which is, how's it going mentally, dude? This guy has basically been the golden boy anointed. He hasn't missed any games. He hasn't really experienced a lot of tumult in his career. He lost 2 games in all of high school, 1 game in all of college. And yeah, he was at Michigan when they were going through the whole Connor Stallions, college Spygate thing. And he was there for that, but it's not like there was, this, other players have overcome a lot more. And including other players have gone through long-term injuries. That was the first experience like that for J.J. McCarthy. So I was very curious to see what he said about going through that kind of the new and unique challenge of being hurt, because you can't outwork your injury. You can't just say, I'm going to put in more hours to it. You have to be really patient. It's a different kind of mental strain. Anyways, there's also Sam Howell, Brett Rippon, and Max Brosmer. Those are your other 3. I'm going to say that, sure, it's a competition open for spots 2 and 3, but let's be honest, I don't think Max Brosmer is going to be able to even get in all that much. I don't think he's going to get that many reps. He has to make the most of it. And unless he is, the secret superstar, but I think there's the reasons that he went undrafted that we talked about on Monday are the same reasons that I don't see him making the team. So Sam Howell and Brett Rippon, it is. One of those will compete for QB2. If we hate them both in the preseason, maybe we trade for someone else. Nick Mullins style, but honestly, I kind of like Sam Howell as a backup for a lot of the same reasons I like Nick Mullins as a backup. Whatever, man, YOLO ball. If JJ McCarthy gets hurt, let's get weird. Moving on to the running backs, you have Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason are your shoe-ins. You have Ty Chandler, who is kind of fending off Xavier Scott and Trey Stewart. We talked about Trey Stewart yesterday with Kevin from Jacksonville State, and why it doesn't seem like he's really got the makeup of the kind of guy that knocks somebody off of the roster. But this will all come down to special teams, and that's where Ty Chandler has his best advantage. He's really important on special teams. He was really a load-bearing pillar, good in punt protection, good in kickoff coverage. Ty Chandler had has a pretty high status in special teams with the Vikings, so it'll be hard to knock him off from that perspective. course, there's also CJ Ham, so call it 4 running backs if you want, which there's been 5 a lot in the Vikings. So this opens up a roster spot for an extra lineman, an extra tight end, which is what I did, an extra receiver if you want. I do have 6 receivers on the team. After Jefferson, Addison, Nailor, Felton, those 4 feel like you can pretty much lock them onto the roster. The wide receiver battle is going to probably be primarily between Nailor and Ty Felton. And then if any undrafted guys really show out, or like a Tim Jones renaissance or something like that, like all that is fine. Rondale Moore, if he's healthy, can join into that. That's all fine. But it's going to be a little bit of king of the hill. Similar to, Ty Chandler versus the Pussycat Dolls. It's Jalen Nailor versus the Pussycat Dolls. Jalen Nailor's the incumbent. He has the job, and it's up to other guys to show up and knock him off of that throne. And you can make whatever prediction you want about if you think Ty Felton's going to take it. I personally don't. Or if you think that there's, an undrafted rookie that's going to be the truth about that, or if it's, Rondale Moore is actually going to be the wide receiver 3 and we're all excited about that. That is obviously, if you think that's going to be the case, then you're kind of taking a risk on his health there, and hey, power to you. For me, just reading between the lines of the way that reporting around his knee has been, Rondale Moore's, I am skeptical that he's going to be available for the beginning of the season. We'll see. I would be surprised if he is available for the beginning of camp. I wouldn't be like jaw on the floor stunned because the reporting is pretty nebulous. But based on just the tea leaf reading I can do, it doesn't seem like that's a resolved situation yet. So we'll see if he's available for the start of camp. But if it's, second week of camp and we start seeing him suit up and he's taking reps, even if it's in a non-contact jersey, that gets a lot more optimistic. It's the kind of thing you have to watch. But for now, I'm feeling like this might be a pup situation. But that's very much just like an instinct off of like trying to read between the lines, not a true report or anything like that. So still very, very soft and fuzzy on that. But if you set him aside, and then you have kind of 1 or 2 spots behind him. For me, I put in Tim Jones because of punt gunning, special teams, Trent Sherfield reasons, and Dante Fleming, who has a decent chance to get the returner job. This is what Kevin told me yesterday, so I'm taking Kevin's word for it. If I'm wrong, it's his fault. At tight end, Hawkinson, Oliver, and then this is where I just had a roster spot at the end. So I didn't have to pick between these 2 tight ends, Gavin Bartholomew and Ben Urasek. But I think in the real world, it will be a decision between those 2. And they're just going to keep like a 1/6 of something they usually keep 5 of. So this is that last roster spot is who really shows out, but there isn't roster room for them, but they earned a spot on the roster anyways. This is like where Taki Taimani and Jalen Redmond made the roster last year, or Dwight McGlothern, you could even say, made the roster last year. But Taki and Redmond, like, you didn't need those bodies. That was more than you usually carry. But the other tight end, Bryson Nesbitt, is has every opportunity to be this guy instead of Urasek. Urasek as a more balanced tight end feels like the one with a better chance to like have utility. And but hey, again, it's all down to special teams, so not counting anybody out by any stretch of the imagination. 5 tight ends is a lot. Another part of this little exercise is going to be going through the roster and figuring out where the numbers are wrong. Where there aren't enough numbers, they have room to bring in another body. Who could that be? Or like what position could that be at? And then maybe even talk about some of the names that could be. We will get into that in a little bit. But just in terms of the skills themselves, we have, 10, 14, 17 from the skills, add 9 from the line, which is, I believe I have 9 from the line. Yeah. That's 26 on offense, which is already 1 higher. And then I'll have just 24 on defense than your 3 specialists. Typically they'll go 25, but sometimes, goes up and down a little bit. So like the numbers make a little bit of sense there, but really it is a absolutely wide open bottom of the depth chart at wide receiver. Guys that were on the team last year are no longer here. I mean, you still have Lucky Jackson, Thayer Thomas, and Jayshon Jones. Those guys did make random appearances, sometimes as practice squad elevations. At wide receiver, you've got Silas Bolden. He's going to take his own swing at the returner job. I'm just picking Dante Fleming in that. You have Robert Lewis, Miles Price, as other undrafted free agents, as guys that I don't really see doing quite as much. But it is a crowded room. 13 receivers is a lot. And that means that those young guys are going to be stepping all over each other for reps. And I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these dudes getting cut before camp even starts if the Vikings end up, bringing in another corner or making a trade for somebody or adding some other move to this room. What's going on the defense and the offensive line we still got to talk about. So we'll do trenches next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Do you know that thing is also an Xbox? You can turn your Amazon Fire TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. You don't need to have a console. You just need a controller and an account with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and you're ready to go. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles, including the real hot ones from this year, EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty, or whatever else you want to play on that Xbox. All you need is a controller to connect and a sign in to be able to play online. This is super clutch if you're the kind of person that wants to bring your Xbox over to a friend's house and play video games with them, but you don't want to lug that gosh darn thing around. You can just bring a little Fire Stick, and it all, of course, can still watch movies, stream from all of the premium streaming services, and do everything. It is your one-stop shop, and the dang thing fits in your pocket. Head on over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. I promise to you, I have a Patreon video coming on the draft picks. I'm working on it, okay? I've got a lot of prep done, and I'm waiting for my voice to be able to handle more recording in a day. It's been a tough week on the old vocal cords just from resting from the draft, but also being sick, so I'm kind of waiting for that to clear up. But we press on nonetheless. Let's talk about the O-line. And I also just want to muse a little bit about where the Vikings are at in their O-line. It's really nice that they have a sort of a defined option at each of those positions. I think 4 of the 5 are probably unquestioned starters, but I will caution you, Donovan Jackson doesn't have a stranglehold on this. There are situations like Garrett Bradbury where he just comes in, he gets the job, there's nobody serious behind him. But the guy that started here last year is still in the building. So in OTAs, if Donovan Jackson is taking second team reps, that's normal. Nobody panic about it, okay? That's normal. He's got to beat out Blake Brandel for the job. And if he's not ready to play because he's not grasping the playbook, because the game's a little bit faster for him, because there's a developmental... as much as Donovan Jackson to me is as pro-ready of a player as you get on his college film, those guys can still just not adjust to the pro game in a way that you can't see on film because it's like a mental or a maturity thing or whatever. And sometimes you just got to grow up a little bit. That's totally fine. But right now, I'm sort of penciling that in as, in the most formal of formal senses, a competition. Blake Brandel and Donovan Jackson. Now, I know who I'm taking in that competition, and I'm going to guess your answer is the same as mine. But I don't think it's guaranteed in the same way that Ryan Kelly is not competing for his job, right? Except for, again, in the most general, never say never kind of sense. But you have your 5 starters in Darisaw, Donovan Jackson, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, Brian O'Neill. Put those guys in ink. Blake Brandel, probably also in ink for the roster. Justin School is, I would say, unless he could really blow it up. And the question I'm really asking here is, if you have a god-awful camp, do you make the team? And that answer is different for Will Fries. Yeah, if you have a bad camp, we're a little concerned about you as a starter, but we ain't cutting you. Versus, and I think that's the same for Blake Brandel, right? Blake Brandel struggles a little bit in camp. I don't think that he gets cut. I think he's kind of earned a bit more benefit of the doubt for that. Harrison Phillips, right? If he has a rough camp, it's going to take a lot to see him getting cut Alex Boone style. But Justin School, well, he has proven nothing here. If he has a bad camp and Walter Rouse just straight up outplays him, we're just going to say bye-bye. Or if Logan Brown outplays him, we just say bye-bye. I don't think that's going to happen with Justin School. So I have him in this, but that's the kind of tier that he's in. Where like, yeah, you still kind of do have to like earn your keep. And then I have Michael Juergens and Walter Rouse. Look, the rest of the offensive line candidates, there's like Henry Bird. He's never made the team. You know, he's been on like he's a guy, a holdover from the practice squad, and I didn't think he was very good. Guys like Leroy Watson, Marcellus Johnson, again, they're kind of like futures deals type of guys. And then there's Joe Huber, Zeke Correll, and Logan Brown. We talked about all of those guys on the undrafted review on Monday. And for various reasons, I just don't know if any of those guys have the goods. They're either just not quite at the like kind of athletes that typically can crack a 53-man roster, and that's why they went undrafted. Or in the case of Logan Brown, you've got a 6-year college player who's been, hurt a little bit, but also took all the way till his senior year to crack the roster at Wisconsin, got kicked off of Wisconsin. I think that's part of it. And then, played a couple years at Kansas, but has the athletic profile and now 3 years of tape on him, and nobody wanted to draft him, right? Like, that's always going to be a little bit of a red flag. And while that's not the kind of take I have on like Donovan Jackson, where I actually sat down, watched the film, came up with my own thing, with the undrafted guys, it's a little bit more fast and loose, just because it's so fast. I'm not going to sit down and like watch 19 guys before I do my podcast. That's impossible. But with Logan Brown, it's just there's always a reason. But we keep an open mind, right? If Logan Brown straight up outplays Justin School in camp and looks great in the preseason and ends up playing with the twos and stuff like that, like nobody's jaws should hit the floor about it. But I don't think that there's a need for like a 10th lineman. But there certainly is room for a 10th lineman if Logan Brown plays great, or let's get it out of that. Let's say, Zeke Correll plays awesome and you want him to be the center, and Michael Juergens is still playing out at guard. So you have your backup center, and then you don't keep Ben Urasek. Like, that's the kind of thing that could happen. So like, there is room for some undrafted rookie on offense. And I already have 2 here. All right. I've got Urasek and Dante Fleming. But there is absolutely room for 1 or 2 of these guys. It's just about whoever shows out in camp, which is kind of beautiful. On the defensive line, there's a little bit less room for dreamers. You got John Allen, you've got Javon Hargrave, you've got Harrison Phillips, Taki Taimani, Jalen Redmond. There's your D-line, your interior guys. For what it's worth, I'm counting Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins as an edge, even though I don't know if that's what he actually ends up playing. But I think, like, call him the 6th D-line if you prefer. And then elsewhere, so the guy I'm cutting here that is going to make people sad is Levi Drake Rodriguez, who just, look, healthy scratch all year long. A new guy comes in that sort of pushes your group, and 2 guys in Taki Taimani and Jalen Redmond played well in actual regular season play. That's a pretty high bar to clear for like a 7th round developmental guy. And unlike when you're a 7th round rookie, and if you don't make the team, stashing you on the roster is still kind of a pretty thing to do. Just, hey, don't expose you to waivers. By year 2, you got to earn your keeper. You got to get the heck out of here. It's exactly what happened to Andre Carter, who kind of got that same, like, yeah, I guess we'll have you on the roster just because we know the hype around you is a lot. We don't want to expose you to waivers. And he played like 3 reps in the season. But then come the next season, buddy, you got to earn your keep. You got to do something, or Bo Richter's going to take your job. And that's exactly what happened. Speaking of Bo Richter, I still have him on the roster. And it's mostly a special teams thing. We talked about that yesterday with Kevin. But after Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, and then I have Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins in this one. So I have 5 and 5, but if you want to relabel it and call it 6 and 4, it would still be the same group of people to me. And then you have like this room at the end, again, for like an underdog, whether that underdog is Bo Richter, whether it's Chaz Chambliss, whether it's Tyler Batty, the 26-year-old BYU, one of these Mormon mission guys, or Gabe Murphy. I think the upset here for me, the chalk move would probably be Gabe Murphy over Bo Richter, because Gabe Murphy, once he came off the roster, once he came off of PUP, he was truly, or was it IR with designation? I forget. But once he came off the injury list, he was directly on the roster. Like, he wasn't like a practice squad up and down kind of guy like Richter. So the team seemed to view him better than Richter, but that also came from, like, the team did not get to see him in pads at all until that injury. Like, if I recall, that injury happened like way early in the offseason. So we didn't get to see a lot of him. So he was sort of on the team, but only by virtue of reputation. And Bo Richter has proven more, and has proven more in the most crucial arena, which is special teams. But the special teams of it all is going to get that back seven, is going to make all the decisions there. And that's where it gets, I think, really hard. There are a few really hard decisions to make. And then there comes points where it just gets really hard to find enough bodies. And that's where we can start talking about free agency. So that'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Moving along with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Let's talk about some off-ball linebackers, the inside linebackers, the Blake Cashmans, the Ivan Paces. This is the first part where, this is one of the only parts where I feel like there's really a crunch of rosterable players. Because after Cashman and Pace, you have two spots. Historically, these Vikings have kept four. Eric Wilson, Kobe King, Brian Asamoah, right? So you've got two guys that have made rosters consistently in the past. Brian Asamoah, as a third-round pick, has outstayed the welcome that gives you and has continued to make the team. Like, third-round picks in year 3, if they're not putting up anything or giving you anything, pretty easy cut. But they haven't cut Brian Asamoah. He's still doing enough on special teams to make that work. Has shown absolutely no use from scrimmage as a linebacker, but he's been helpful on special teams. So he's made that world work, right? And then you add Kobe King to this. Plus, you've got a couple of other sort of, long shot names. You can call him Max Tooley, a couple of Auburn guys, Austin Keys and Dorian Mousey, that have the most uphill battle to make this. But really, it's those three guys, Eric Wilson, Kobe King, Brian Asamoah, pick 2. Personally, I got Eric Wilson and Kobe King. Those guys can both do plenty in special teams. I don't think that the advantage that Brian Asamoah has over those two guys in the special teams arena is enough to make up for how little he gives you as a linebacker. But I'm being pretty presumptuous about Kobe King, that he'll be able to show enough. And maybe this is just going to be a draft pick deference thing, a team control thing, right? Brian Asamoah, you only have 1 year of team control. You've got 4 years of Kobe King. So if you cut him, put him on the practice squad, you lose all that good rookie contract stuff. You expose him to waivers. If you cut Brian Asamoah and he goes his separate ways, it doesn't feel quite as bad. So that is like, I think, the pole position. And I think it's on Asamoah to be like, no, I actually am a better linebacker than Eric Wilson. And there's just no world where he's proven anything like that yet. He needs to kind of show out and he needs to show up and show that to the coaches to get there. But like, Eric Wilson's not a lock, man. Like, I like him. I liked him back when he was here the first time. I like him as a depth player. I think as a bona fide starter, that's a lot. and Green Bay kind of learned that, and the Vikings learned that back in like 2020 when that happened to them. But as depth and special teams, okay, great, love it. But it's not a lock. He's a little bit older now. Good for him, man. Undrafted. Like, look at him for all the undrafted dudes, right? Undrafted rookie sneaking onto teams and getting plenty of play. And he's like 30. Like, he's had a whole career. But, a little bit older. But I think he's your Kamu, right? Like, to me, if I had to put it, if Pace is hurt and I have to put in a linebacker, he's the only one I remotely trust. Kobe King's got fun potential. Brian Asamoah is special teams. Eric Wilson's the only one I remotely trust. But again, I ask the question, what if he just stinks it up big time in camp? Well, there's nothing, you're not keeping him on the roster, right? Not that way. You're not beholden to keep him on the roster. If Ivan Pace stinks it up in camp, you're going to go, okay, we got to work through this because he's like our starter. He's our guy. But not for Eric Wilson. But that doesn't mean that would be a pretty extreme result. So it's pretty easy for me to put him on my 53. Moving on to the D-backs, this is where it gets hard, man. So I'll give you the names that I think are inarguably making the roster, right? Byron Murphy, Isaiah Rodgers, Mekhi Blackman, Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson. Those 6 guys, pretty hard to find a world where one of those guys gets cut, right? If you're predicting that, you got a pretty hot take. And you got all these guys that are like probably, but not guaranteed to make the roster. Again, if they stink it up big time in camp, you can get rid of them. that's where you start talking about like Jay Wards or Jeff Okudah or Dwight McGlothern, right? That those guys have pathways to the roster, right? And they have the precedent of being on the roster. They're even talking up Jay Ward as this guy they're like excited about making the next step or something like that. I'll believe that when I see it. But you know, Jeff Okudah, he's got like a million and change guaranteed. So it's a pretty hard cut. But like if he sucks so bad that, you know, undrafted rookies are playing better than him, like you're just going to eat your losses and cut him. Unlike, you know, Isaiah Rodgers, right? Like that would be crazy. But, unlike if Theo Jackson really said, okay, well, you just signed a pretty big deal there. So I don't think that reads as their intention. But boy, if you get like a great, you know, Zemiah Vaughn preseason, I'm sorry, but like buy Tavier Thomas. Like we don't need you. And Tavier is another special teams guy. This is the thing I was talking about with Kevin yesterday. You can go listen to that show. The Vikings have this roster right now. I'm looking at just guys that are kind of here because they contribute on special teams and not really because I expect them to do anything from scrimmage. Are Tim Jones, that was his job in Jacksonville. Tavier Thomas, that was his job. What was it, Tennessee, where he came from? Ty Felton, that is like the purpose of drafting him, is really raw receiver with some really big technique flaws, but like the whole point of him is that he was a big contributor on special teams. That's 3 guys right now. It's 3 Najee Thompsons. And it's really weird to imagine like that we've got all these guys. Like, I don't know if you can keep all these guys. And I'm looking at my 53, and that's the biggest critique that I have of my own is, okay, but who's playing from scrimmage, dude? Like, but I don't know. And that's why it's like, man, somebody's got to join this team and knock off like the Tavier Thomas, or the Dwight McGlothern, or maybe even Jeff Okudah, who probably will have to do some from special teams because I don't see the Vikings wanting to rely on him a lot at corner. I think right now, if you played a game tomorrow, you'd have your top 3, Murph, Rodgers, Mackay, and then Jeff Okudah would be like rotating in as needed. But I think the Vikings are going to want to add a body to this. It's been reported that they want to add a body to this. So my instincts, you don't need to just trust my instincts on that. It's probably happening. Of course, there's, you know, all that talk about Asante Samuel that we did on Wednesday, but there's also Mike Hilton. There's a return of somebody like Stephon Gilmore or Shaq Griffin. That's obviously an option. You could monitor other situations around the league like Jalen Ramsey or Jair Alexander. There are a lot of corner options still kind of available. None of them are going to change the texture of your room, right? The difference between the Vikings being a contender or not is not going to be, oh my God, can we get Stephon Gilmore back? But it'll help. It'll help just kind of bolster, like just add a little bit more stability to that room and give yourself a safeguard if Isaiah Rodgers just isn't all he's cracked up to be, or if Mekhi Blackmon just can't play after missing a year. Those are real possibilities that they should be covered for, and just kind of aren't right now. And so I hope that the body that gets added, whoever it is a little bit serious, but all those guys are going to come with their own question marks anyways, be they age or health. And I think kind of exclusively, it's like you have to get a guy that's either got an age concern or a health concern or both. I guess Shaq Griffin doesn't have an age or a health concern too much. He also just kind of wasn't that good. So he was fine, but it uninspiring, right? And hidden a lot. And that's what I hope the Vikings don't have to do as much of, is hide their corners. They went to a little more man coverage last year, but it sort of petered out on them. And then they had to go back to the zone, a lot of the 2 in the quarters and the palms and the easier assignments that don't ask those guys to be downfield man cover mavens. And offenses can know that and try to exploit it. And that's a lot of what the Rams did at the end got them. And it's the Thursday night game is the one that sticks in my mind. The first time the Rams beat the Vikings, where they just victimized these dudes on the outside. And I hope that we can put ourselves in a world where we're not quite as susceptible to that. We are not there yet. And I don't know if anybody actually solves that problem, but you can kind of hope to solve it by virtue of competition and play the odds. As for safety, Harrison Smith, Metellus Theo, the only other safety I kept on my 53-man roster. So my final corners, by the way, Murphy, Rodgers, Mackay, Jeff Okudah, Tavier Thomas, and then Nudie McGlothern. get rid of one of those guys if you sign a new one. Obviously, that name will change. It's probably Tavier to me. If Tavier Thomas is gone, if they bring a new guy, I would probably remove Tavier Thomas from my list. But then you have Harry Metellus Theo, and then I do have Jay Ward continuing to make the team. And it's just because there's nobody that really feels like they're pushing him. You know, you've got Bubba Bolden and Mish Powell. Both are either futures contract, undrafted guys, but pretty tough world. I think Jay Ward kind of has a stranglehold on this position, even though he himself would be vulnerable. Who's challenging him? Maybe another guy. Maybe they have a safety that joins the roster as well. I'm not as familiar with what's going on in free agency there right now, but we'll see. That's 53 if you count Will Reichert. I do have Ryan Wright winning the punt battle and Andrew De Paola. There is your 53. Let me know. I want to hear your hot takes. Okay. I don't want to hear you like yell at me because I'm like not high enough on Ty Felton or whatever. I don't want to hear you yell at me because I cut Levi Drake Rodriguez or over I want to hear your hot. I want to hear you be like, no, you know what? Miles Price, he's making the team. I want to hear that stuff. Okay. So if you're on YouTube, leave it in the comments. Otherwise, I don't know. Put it in a hot take in the Town Hall Tuesday doc, and I'll get to a bunch of those next Tuesday. I will see you all next week. And as always, Skull.